So we have here an iPad Pro 12-inch. First step after you clean the screen, it is cracked, so I'm gonna cover it with some regular tape to avoid getting injured and to make it easier. Then you want to heat the sides, the four sides, with some good heat gun here. Slowly use your pry tool. I use a metallic tool here to gently go in. Don't go too far in because you could damage the LCD. Basically keep heating and take your time. I use guitar picks here to just hold it while I open and keep opening it around. I start with the top, then the left side, then the bottom side, and then I'm gonna end up with the right side because the right top corner is the one that's broken. Now be careful, again, the sides are very thin. You don't want to go too deep. I'll show you on the new screen. The top has maybe half an inch, but the sides maybe an eighth of an inch. So it's very easy to damage the screen. You don't want to do that. So just go very slowly and not too deep, especially on the sides because they're very thin. And you keep going until the glue is all gone and the screen snaps out like that. Be careful, cable assembly for the screen and the LCD are inside in the middle. There are brackets holding everything down. First, the logic board is held down by I think about 8 screws. You're gonna need to remove that shield because the first thing I want to do now is unplug the battery, disconnect the battery before doing anything else to avoid shorting anything. It's very easy to short stuff. So this is the shield after you remove all the screws. I think they're all the same size except for one, which is on the right side. I think the second or the third. Just keep them in a good order so you know how to put them back exactly where they came from. This is the battery connector, one screw, and then I use a guitar pick to go in between, which disconnects the battery now. And test it and make sure it's disconnected. Here you can tell it won't turn on, so it's good. Next steps to remove that little bracket that holds the screen connectors to the logic board. There are 3 screws. The long one is in the middle and 2 short ones at the top on each side. Again, take your time, put them aside, don't lose those screws, they're very important and very small. And avoid touching any of those components, they're very small and very delicate and they break easily. Every step of this repair is really hard, but you just gotta take your time and it will be fine. Don't rush anything. And once you remove that bracket, again, very gently snap those connectors out of the logic board. And there you go, it's completely disconnected. Now, I'm gonna concentrate first on the iPad, cleaning the edge, and removing the old glue. There's double-sided tape on the edges, and then I'll focus on the screen, which is the hardest part. I'm gonna have to desolder those connectors. So first, I use a little bit of alcohol and some scraping tool here. You want to make sure that these edges are clean perfectly. There's no residue left, which will be better for the new double-sided tape that will hold the new screen in place. It's a good idea also to double check at this time all the edges and make sure they are not bent. Usually when an iPad or a device like this falls, one of the edge will bend, and the corner here that's bent is the top right corner. I'm gonna have to go ahead and use some pliers and other tools to try to straighten up that corner again. If the corner is inwards, when you put the new screen, it won't fit properly. Last check here with a little cotton swab and some alcohol and remove all the glue. Here's that corner that's bent. Now be gentle because that's very brittle. It will break easily. But you don't want any pieces to be left inside or poking in inside. So I use small pliers here. I even use a little file to take the edge off because it's very sharp. I think it's made of aluminum, so this will break easily. When you feel that it's rounded back to the same original place, you should be good. Now the old screen here, all these connectors in the middle will have to be disconnected, and they are not connected with regular connectors. They're actually soldered in, so that's going to be a hard one. Here I'm removing the home button assembly. The home button connector was connected here with covered with some tape. I removed the tape and I use my heat gun to heat the glue, and slowly but surely, without breaking this cable, I will unglue it from its base. It takes a while, but take your time. You don't want to break that. Again, that will be another part that you have to get. So once the cable for the home button is unglued, you can remove the bracket that holds the actual home button. It's also glued on, and it has some foam pads on top. You want to save all that to transfer to the new screen. Keep heating. Keep using heat to separate the home button and its cable all together from the old screen. That's gonna take a few minutes, and keep using your heat gun, and it will eventually just pop out and snap out. Don't break the cable. Again, it's very small and very easy to break. Now once it's out, just set it aside, and now you're onto the other cables. Here's the home button assembly. Remove a little bit of tape on the left side. We're not going to use this cable because it comes with the new screen. We're just going to snap it out because I need the centerpiece here with all the other cables. On the right side, just take the tape off, unplug that cable, and it's also glued onto the back of the screen. So very gently heat it and unglue it because we're going to need that. The goal here is to unglue the centerpiece here, flip it towards me so I can access the solder joint for those side cables which I'm uncovering now. Here's one piece of tape that holds the right side cable at the bottom of the screen, and here's the tape that holds the left one. Those two cables will have to be desoldered. I'm going to use my heat gun to desolder it with some flux. Temperature I'm using on the heat gun is probably about 405, 410 degrees. But for now, I'm just keep ungluing those cables. So it goes to the center here, which is another board for the LCD assembly. The center of this board here is also held on by some glue. So again, same process. Keep prying that thing until it slowly detaches from the back of the LCD. Keep using small pressure, the heat gun, and eventually it will unglue itself. There you go. Now flip it on the other side, and then you can access those solder joints. Here I'm gonna use again the heat gun, some flux. I added a little bit of my solder, which is leaded solder. Helps to desolder a lot faster because it lowers the melting point. Once it's desoldered, you clean it up, and now under the microscope, it's not easy to see, but under the microscope, I'm actually adding leaded solder to each of the pad. And be very careful when you desolder not to lift any pads, so don't put any pressure at all on the cables. Just let the heat desolder it for you. It will separate on its own after it reaches the melting point. Here I'm adding again leaded solder with my iron on each of those pads. I counted about 140 pads. I think there's 70 on each side. So 70 for the left cable and 70 for the right cable. Once you're satisfied that all the pads have a new solder, you can prep the new screen. Here I'm removing the tape on the new screen so I can get access to those new cables. Put some flux, and there's going to be windows on the right and the left of each side of the connectors here. You have to align the windows with those little square. So there's 4 of them, 2 for each cable. Once you know it's aligned, you can just solder 1 on each side or 2 on each side to hold the cable in place. And once you satisfy and you verify, mostly under the microscope, you can see that it's aligned. You can go ahead now and solder each joint one by one. Now that's what makes this repair a little bit more challenging. You're gonna have to make sure that you heat the pad so that the solder flows through the whole hole on each solder joint to make a good bond. If you miss one of those, or if you bridge any of these, you will have ghosting or dead spots on your screen. After I clean it and I'm satisfied everything is connected, I put a little bit of tape on it and I'm ready to reassemble the LCD and then put it back on the iPad. So make sure you put tape back where it belongs. That centerpiece here needed some tape, so did the home button assembly. All those cables I taped back onto the LCD so that they stay in place. I use double-sided tape. This is the home button on, the home button bracket, and everything else in reverse. Double check that everything is connected and secure. Put all the old tapes back on to cover as it was before, exactly in reverse. Now it takes a little alignment to put those center cable back onto the logic board, but it's feasible. Now I put my double-sided tape on each of the sides of the new LCD and get it ready. And now it's back in and I'm testing it and I can see it's on. Double test the home button, test for any dead spot or anything on the screen. It looks fine. Thanks for watching.